All right. Well, Moist is here, so it seems like the right time now to actually start reacting and stuff. He sent me this, and I will. Moist is in such a good place right now. I'm so happy for him. He's super motivated. He's learning editing and all this stuff, and it's awesome. And he posted a video and sent it to me, and this is a video that every single person in the game can use. I don't think it's just going to be useful for dogfighters. It's going to be useful for everything. And it's a dogfighter's guide to ship combat settings in Star Citizen.
If you're new to Star Citizen, a veteran who leans more towards industrial gameplay, or a humble explorer of the verse, jumping into combat can be overwhelming. There's no substitute for training, but you can make your life easier in combat by taking the time to configure a number of in-game settings. Welcome to a Dogfighter's comprehensive guide to the most optimal combat settings. Stick around until the end of the video, where I'll discuss which settings can help you improve your aim. I'll be using some combat terminology.
And that's the setting. Like, Noodle tells me that I have better aim than him, but he's the one who taught me the settings I needed to learn how to aim. So I would have never,
in this video. However,
that makes sense,
I'll be explaining this terminology as we go, and I'll have on-screen prompts with definitions. I've also added chapters to make it easier to navigate to specific sections that you might be interested in. So let's jump straight into it.
That was cool.
Coupled and decoupled flight is one of the most common questions I get over on Twitch. Coupled simply means that when you don't provide control input, then IFCS, the flight control system, will bring your ship to a stop, where decoupled mode will leave your ship drifting. Let's discuss the pros and cons of both. Coupled with the speed limiter can make landing easier for new players who are using keyboard and mouse, as decoupled
but it looks so scuffed.
Flight in gravity requires constant upstrafe. Coupled can also be helpful for keeping your speed down in combat. However, it can also cause a target's pip to become a bit more unstable and therefore harder to hit. As mentioned earlier, decoupled means that when you're not providing control input, your ship will continue its vector, or to drift until you try to bring the ship to a stop. So why might you want this? A minor pro is that decoupled will save you fuel as you're only using the thrusters when you actually need them. But decoupled also makes your ship's movements a lot smoother, which allows you to do some of those smooth and fancy landings.
Yeah.
More importantly, decoupled helps smooth out your target's pip in combat. This is because whenever your ship fires a thruster, it affects your target's pip. Decoupled can also make merging onto targets much easier once you've learned how to manage your speed. By default, your ship will be coupled. You can change the default option in the game settings. There's also a keybind in the flight movement section, which is the C key by default. As a little tip, I would recommend learning how to fly decoupled sooner rather than later. If you have some downtime and you want to practice.
This was the hardest part for me. So if you're a new person watching this video, like new to the game and trying to learn some of these systems, this was the thing that I think whenever I trained with Noodle and other people as well, that I had the most difficulty with, because, and he might get to it, but if you like combine boost and, you know, you're moving your sticks around and you're shooting in one direction, you end up moving in that direction at such a high speed that it's hard to recover from it. And it is much more difficult to control your ship. Now in space, it's not as big of an issue because you can't run into things or, you know, crash into stuff, but it is really, really, really difficult. And yeah, so just so everybody knows, and this is something me and Noodle are planning, is Noodle is going to train me, and I don't know if I'm going to make videos of it, but Noodle is certainly going to make videos of taking an absolute dummy when it comes to this stuff. Like, I have zero setup, nothing ready to go, bad at the game, horrible at flying, horrible at landing, horrible at shooting. I am terrible. He's going to take me from 0 to hopefully 5. And yeah, I heard he mentioned it in the video. So obviously we're going away for the holidays, but when I get back, that's going to be the plan.
Just go into a solo arena commander mode, throw your ship into decoupled, and try to fly around a static object without drifting away. This will help teach you speed and distance control. As an extra tip, ensure that you have space brake bound, especially when learning to fly decoupled. Space brake is exactly what it sounds like. It brings your ship to a stop.
Wait, it works now? I literally have it completely unbound. I thought it doesn't work.
The keybind can be found in the flight movement section and is bound to the X key.
There was a
by
patch where it
default.
didn't work, right?
The speed limiter is exactly what it sounds like. It can be useful if you're new and you're not used to landing your ship, as it'll make it a little less twitchy. However, I would recommend learning to fly without the limiter as soon as possible, as using it will turn you into a sitting duck in combat.
Yeah, just don't use it.
I'm not endorsing flying at high speed, but even in safe combat speeds or SCM, you do need to be able to maneuver without artificial limitations. You can change the default setting for the speed limiter in the game settings, and a keybind for turning it on and off can be found in the flight movement section.
Easy.
Proximity Assist was added to Star Citizen to assist players when landing. It was a well-intentioned mechanic. However, for those who low fly or dogfight in atmosphere, it can cause a loss of maneuverability. The way it works is that it reduces the thrust output from your thrusters when you're near the ground, a pad, or a hangar. The option is on by default.
Is this the reason why when you don't have your landing gear down, you just slam into the hangar when you're decoupled? Or even coupled, I think. You just like fall to the ground? Yeah, it's the worst.
And it can be found in the game settings. Just bear in mind that Proximity Assist has been bugged for some time and can randomly turn itself back on. So if your ship seems sluggish, check this setting. The total...
What do we think, like, just before we move on from coupled and decoupled, what do we think about the change that came more recently where you can kind of like hold to couple now? I really like that. So like, you know, personally, when I'm mining or cargo hauling, I prefer to be just in coupled mode and to be able to land in the hangar while holding down the decouple button just for that moment when I need it for that smooth landing has been really nice. But this is, again, specifically about dogfighters, and and I think nearly everybody should be in decoupled. I think, Noodle, there was a moment where we flew coupled. I think there were situations where we used it and there's situations where we didn't, but I couldn't remember when we were training for fight or flight way back when.
Velocity indicator is a pair of HUD and visor elements that help you understand where your ship is going. It comes in two parts: the floating TVI, which you can see moving around you, and the fixed TVI, which is in the lower left of your HUD. So how do they work? The floating TVI is an icon that moves around your ship and shows...
I never knew what that was until now.
The direction
I'm literally a zero. I don't know anything.
So if the TVI icon is over a rock, then you're going to hit that rock. The floating TVI also indicates whether you're going forwards or backwards. The triangular inward pointing arrows means forwards, and the outward pointing icon means backwards. The fixed TVI on the lower left of your HUD is an excellent reference for pilots who have become disorientated. The small white dot indicates your vector, while the growing red bar indicates speed.
Oh, the growing red bar as well.
I personally keep the floating TVI turned off as I find it distracting, but I recommend newer players keep it on while they're learning to fly decoupled. There are three settings for the floating TVI: always off, fading, and always on.
I have it always on.
Off and on are pretty obvious. Fading means that the TVI disappears when it's behind your crosshair.
I know nothing about G-force
G-Safe is
safety.
a G-force limiter that helps prevent your character from blacking out or redding out from high G-forces. You're less likely to encounter this in a larger fighter, but it is pretty common in light fighters. By default, it's turned on, but I keep this turned off because it limits how maneuverable your ship can be in a dogfight, which means that you'll be less evasive, and it can also make it harder to get your crosshair on the target. This setting can be...
Hold on, we can see how long Noodle was filming this B-roll. Oh my goodness. He was doing everything in this on this map. 96 minutes in the match.
And it can also make it harder to get your crosshair on the target.
Holy.
This setting can be found in game settings. There is also the option to keybind this settings.
So I just have this setting on. G-Safe disabled while boosting. That's the only one that I have. But it defaults on.
You can turn it on and off on the fly, but you'll need to set it yourself as there is no default keybind. It can be found in the flight movement section. By the way, here's a little tip about blackouts. When you start to see your character blacking out, strafe in the direction that your ship is currently traveling in, not against it. Use space dust in your ship's TVI to find your vector. Also, you can view the amount of Gs that your ship is pulling in the lower right of your HUD.
Is he out?
Star Citizen offers several different ways to get your weapons on target. Fixed weapons have a very small amount of aim assist and require you to aim more accurately, while auto gimbal allows your weapons to turn towards your target. So which should you use? Some more experienced
Fixed all the way, baby.
fighters suggest that you should only use
Here,
fixed.
I'll link the video now.
But the fact of the matter is that you need to work out what is best for you. So let's take a look at the difference. Right now in 3.22, using gimbals means that you have to downsize your weapons. CIG have confirmed that this will be changing in the future. This generally means that when using gimbals, you do slightly less damage. So if you can aim, fixed is the way to go.
Yeah, and what are they doing now about it? So the future is that you no longer have to use a smaller weapon to use gimbals, but you have a lower fire rate, I believe. So fixed weapons are going to have a much higher fire rate in the future. And as of right now, this is the plan. And then gimbal weapons will just fire slowly or more slower because it has to calculate where to send stuff. So that's basically going to be the difference. So if you need the help, then you use it so you might hit more shots than normal, but less often because you will be firing less. Or if you don't need it, you're going to go fixed and just, down people but you got to be able to hit.
So why would you use gimbal? Gimbal can help those who need a little bit of extra help with their aiming. After all, we've all grown old while waiting to answer the call. But those small weapons do have an advantage over their larger counterparts. They hold more rounds in the capacitor and they recharge faster. So while they do less damage, they're better for denying the shield regeneration of your target. Gimbals actually have two options, auto gimbal and manual gimbal.
Yeah, it's sad that they feel like training wheels because I always thought that like manual gimbals felt really satisfying to watch your like the lasers kind of move across the screen and aim, I think.
While auto gimbal tries to aim at the target automatically, manual gimbal uses head or eye tracking to aim at the target. I wouldn't personally try using this at range because accuracy can be an issue. However, close up it can actually be quite useful. Here's an example from my friend Aondo, who uses manual gimbal to control the remote turret on the Arrow. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a turret on the top.
Like, how cool is that?
If you want to see more manual gimbal action from Aondo, check out the link to his YouTube in the description below.
That's so cool, right?
So what about the options? In game settings, you can select the default gimbal mode, auto, manual, or fixed. There's also a keybind that allows you to swap between them on the fly. Sometimes you may need to do this, as there are some flight maneuvers that pilots can utilize to evade slow-moving auto gimbals. If you want to learn more about gimbals, I'm going to be training and collaborating with SaltEMike, which will become a combat guide, so keep your eyes open for that video.
Yep.
By the way, if you're finding this guide
subscribed.
useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button. It really helps support the channel, and if you'd like to see more guides like this one, hit the subscribe button.
You fucking hate that guy? I know, me too.
Weapon convergence is a setting that dictates how far from your ship your weapon fire should
He's a noob, so it'll be good to train with that guy. I don't like him either, but yeah.
meet. This setting used to be a lot more important before CIG added nudging to the game. Nudging being that auto-aim that helps guide your weapon fire to the target when you're not quite on pip. However,
I know like the hardcore PvPers hated this nudging thing. Nudging saved the game. I think if nudging wasn't in the game, nobody would be able to enjoy it. I don't think people remember just how gated combat was to players way back when. And I know for myself, I wasn't able to compete in the game until they started doing that. It was awful. You had to be a pixel perfect aimer to be able to hit anything. And nowadays it's a lot simpler, but I think within reason, which is really, really good. So that's I don't know, that's kind of where I wanted to see it.
However, there is still a use case where weapon convergence is useful, and that's when aiming at close-up objects that you can't target, such as people on the ground. Having the convergence up close makes it easier to hit them with multiple weapons. There are a couple of settings for weapons convergence. In game settings, you can set the default convergence range. This setting is called Guns Fallback Convergence Distance. There are also a number of keybinds under Vehicle Weapons that allow you to adjust the convergence on the fly. This is a bit more useful than the default setting. However, something to bear in mind is that as of 3.22, there is still no UI support for this option, so it can be difficult to judge the convergence without firing your weapons.
I just kind of guess where it should be and then just leave it there. I never touch it.
If you find yourself accidentally looping through the number of armed missiles in missile operator mode, there is a setting to prevent this. In game settings, scroll down to Missiles, Armed Missile Count Can Loop, and set it to No.
Oh, okay.
Situational awareness is incredibly important in combat. One way to improve your situational awareness is with name.
Are we just ignoring what was...
In combat. One way to improve your...
That was when you still had facial hair. That...
Your situational awareness is with nameplates. The nameplates help you spot targets, but more importantly, to differentiate between multiple targets. The nameplates can also show
it
distance.
landed on him.
By default, party nameplates are on, but neutral and hostile nameplates are off. This can be changed in the game settings.
Yeah, just turn on all of them. I don't know why anybody would have them off. Is it some sort of performance thing? I don't know, but I feel like you would want to know. This I want to know. Because I have turned my field of view to certain places and started feeling sick or whatever. But I see some people, they are so zoomed out because you could see out the side of the windows.
Field of view is something that is often overlooked when it comes to ship combat, but can drastically affect your efficiency. Star Citizen is a game filled with diegetic UI, diegetic UI being a user interface built into the game world itself. We can see this in the form of the Mobi-Glass, ASOP and ship terminals, but also in our ships in terms of the MFDs and HUD. And this is where field of view comes into play. When increasing or decreasing the field of view, it affects the size of the UI within your ship. A smaller FOV increasing the UI size, and a larger FOV decreasing it, making it harder to see. When in
That's true. Like, I honestly prefer it closer. But at the same time, being able to see out the sides makes tracking targets so much easier.
combat, you need to be able to easily and quickly view elements of your HUD or MFDs, such as speed, ammo count, shield status, fixed TVI, and even the crosshair. Something else to bear in mind with the FOV is that increasing your FOV can make objects appear further away, so if you're a knife-fighting style combat pilot, it may be wiser to have a smaller FOV so you can more easily judge those distances. Before we move on, I'd like to make an appeal to CIG. Please give separate FOV sliders for in-ship and on-foot.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. It shouldn't change the size of the UI, basically.
Notifications in Star Citizen are, quite frankly, awful. They pop up in the middle of your screen, they're large and incredibly distracting. As of Star Citizen 3.21, we can now hide certain notifications such as friend requests and party invites. However, as much as I hate the notifications, I would like to suggest that you leave them on. Party markers in Star Citizen have been broken for about half a decade and very often disappear.
Yep, since they've existed.
The best way to get them back is to create a new party, which isn't ideal when you're in the middle of a dogfight. If this happens and a friend is trying to find you to help you, it's easier for your friend to add you to a new party and for you to press the left square bracket to accept the invite than it is for you to open your Mobi-Glass mid-dogfight.
I never notice the notifications anymore either, but if we could remove them, it would be great.
As mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're struggling with your aim, there are settings you can adjust to help both mouse and joystick users. If you're a mouse user, you have the option to use VJoy, Virtual Joystick. VJoy is the default mode and treats your mouse like it's a joystick, where there's a center point that you drag the mouse away from to rotate the ship, and then return it to that center to stop the rotation. There are several VJoy settings worth adjusting from default. Out of the box, the game gives VJoy a gigantic dead zone. This makes aiming far more difficult than it needs to be. The setting is called Pilot VJoy Mouse Dead Zone. I recommend reducing it to somewhere around 1 or below. You can visually see the dead zone around your crosshair. It's indicated using 4 circular dashes. We're reducing this because the larger the dead zone, the harder it is to be accurate aiming, as you'll kind of zigzag trying to get the crosshair into the pip. Another setting for VJoy to adjust is the Pilot VJoy Range Yaw, as well as the Pilot VJoy Range Pitch. These adjust how far from the center you need to drag the mouse to rotate the ship. You can make adjustments based on your preference. Give it a try. By the way, I'm not a mouse user, so a big thank you to Jace from Ramming Department for talking me through the mouse settings. He is a very friendly motherfucker who is honestly one of the best pilots that I know and can be found streaming on Twitch.
Yep.
Check out the link in the description below.
So I've learned how to, like, my last attempt at being good at PvP was stick in the left and mouse in my right hand. And I got pretty good, but I don't think I have it anymore. No mentions of mouse mode without VJoy. I don't think that's very useful, but I mean, Jace is here in chat, so he might be able to tell you why, but I don't think I think it's really hard to use to aim and fly the ship that way.
ESP stands for Enhanced Stick Precision. It works by dampening the input from your VJoy or your joystick the closer you aim to the pip. This allows you to aim into the pip with more accuracy. The downside of the way that ESP works, however, is that when you're fighting someone who is jinking, jinking being a real-world term for evasive flying to avoid gunfire in a dogfight.
Uh-oh.
ESP can make it harder to aim into a fast-moving pip, but this can be countered with basic flight maneuvers and/or temporarily disabling ESP. In terms of settings, the main two can be found in game settings and are called Pilot ESP Zone Size and Pilot ESP Dampening Curvature.
I think this is where I started to learn how to aim, was what, like, dialing these in correctly was when my aim started getting good.
The zone size is the radius around the pip that dictates when ESP should kick in, while the curve is how strong the effect is. Different pilots will use different ESP settings. It's a very subjective option.
Yeah, it's a preference.
But for reference, I use a zone size of around 10 and a dampening curvature of 1.06. From my experience, having the zone size too large can have the unintended consequence of slowing the rotation speed of your ship in a rate fight, while having the dampening curvature too high can have the unintended consequence of making it harder to hit a fast-moving pip. I strongly recommend experimenting with these settings for yourself to figure out what works for you. Don't be afraid to start with a slightly larger radius and curve and then dial it down over time as you get used to the ship's controls. If you're wondering if I use curves on my joysticks, the answer is no.
Really, Noodle?
My
That's funny.
strafes, roll, and rotational axis are all
Apparently he broke his ESP settings during these fights.
completely linear with very little dead zone. So there we have it. This is how I configure my game. If you configure yours differently, let me know in the comments. If you've learned something new, I really recommend playing around with the settings I've discussed in this video to discover what really works best for you. I spent quite a bit of time fact-checking the script for this video, but if you've noticed something I missed or you have any questions, then feel free to ask in the comments. A big thank you for all the support for my rock, paper, scissors video.
Yeah.
It was my first real video that wasn't just a rip from my stream. I put a lot of work into it, and I took some of the feedback from that video to improve the quality for this one. I worked on this video quite a bit longer than I had originally planned, as I'm kind of learning.
Literally the only thing I would change is the song right now, is the rapper rapping in the background. If that is literally the only feedback I would give from the entire video. Like, it's so good.
And trying to build motion graphics as I go, which I can now use in my future videos. A big thank you to my Patreons. They've allowed me to spend a bit more time concentrating on creating YouTube content. If you would like to support the channel, hitting the like and subscribe buttons is a massive help, as is sharing the videos with your friends and org members. But if you want to take it a step further,
I will be dropping the link at the
in
end.
the description below.
Absolutely.
But until next time, I've been Moist Noodle, and I'll shoot you guys in the verse.
Yep. Dude, that was awesome. That's basically all the things that me and Noodle have gone through, the times that we have trained. And the first part is painful. It's really hard to get used to decoupled. I am not looking forward to doing that again, but we will. And then the aiming part and dialing those settings is probably the most fun, and everything in between. I cannot wait to do that. But yeah, that's literally the only feedback I would give. That was really well done, and I can't wait to get going on our training, man. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I something that I always desire in the game is to be serviceable. I don't ever want to be just like a disaster, right? And that's where I'm at right now when it comes to combat. If somebody engages with me, I have no chance at survival. So I just want to be serviceable in a fight and not, you know, take the team down, like bring the team down or whoever I'm playing with, or not being able to defend myself from anything, right? So that's how I feel at the moment, and I just gotta to get there, and this is how we're gonna do it. So looking forward to it. I hope you guys get subscribed to Moist. I'll link the video to you guys right now so you don't miss this video or those videos coming up, and show him some love. Yeah, head over there, subscribe. He's here in chat, so check him out on his live streams. Hit the follow button here if you guys haven't yet, And he said he just hit 2K subs as well. So congrats, Noodle. I really appreciate everything you're doing and everything you've done for me in the past. Noodle's a he's genuinely the most awesome person in this community. So show him some love.